One second.
What is good, everybody? Apparently, we just lost Vish Kumaran. He popped out as I hit the go live button. Welcome to Under Review on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. Vish hopefully will be popping back in momentarily. We are 1 day away from the start of the scouting combine in Indianapolis. We still don't know who the 49ers defensive coordinator is going to be. We're going to hear from the general manager of this team tomorrow. He speaks 11 a.m. Eastern time at the combine, so maybe we'll have more detail. Not going to lie, part of me is hoping that we get a little defensive coordinator announcement during the show as we welcome back in Vish Kumaran. Vish, do you think there's a chance we find out who the DC is going to be during our show today?
First, my bad. I had a quick thing I needed to go do, and I was like, wait 1 second, and you were like, and we're now live.
I clicked the button
as I
before.
said that. I know. So then it was like, then I was scrambling to get back here. And then, no, I don't think we're going to get the announcement during our show.
Isn't it like the combine starts tomorrow and they don't have a defensive coordinator? It makes me think it's got to be an internal hire, because if they were going to poach somebody from somebody else's team, that other team would want to make moves to fill the spot. But the fact that we haven't heard anything makes me think they're just going to bump up somebody.
I think this brings up a different kind of question. What is the role of the defensive coordinator on the 49ers, right? Because you take this to think it's going to be an internal hire. Perhaps it could be that. But my question to you is, if the defensive coordinator who's coming to the 49ers, the reason they have no urgency to hire him is because why? They're not replacing the staff, right? Kocurek is going to remain the defensive line coach. Johnny Holland is going to remain the linebackers coach. Bullocks is going to remain the secondary coach. The new defensive coordinator is not going to bring his own staff. Two, he's not going to change the scheme, which is why they're not pressed about it even during the combine, because Kocurek, Holland, Bullocks, the rest of the defensive staff will go about doing their business the way they need to, regardless of whether there's a coordinator, right? They know what they're looking for. They know what they're scouting for right now. They know what they're doing internally in terms of studying their own players. That process doesn't change whether there's a defensive coordinator or not, which means that the number one qualification basically for the 49ers in terms of their defensive coordinators, they need a guy to call the plays in terms of and game plan, in terms of and lead a game plan in terms of the season, right? They don't need a guy to bring a scheme. They don't need to bring a guy to bring structure. They don't need a guy to bring a vision in terms of what they're looking for. They just need a guy to call plays within their scheme and game plan. That means to me, it can't be an internal guy, actually, Rob. That's what I'm coming to say, because there's no internal guy to me that has experience being a play caller and being a guy who game plans against the top offenses. I want them to have an established veteran defensive coordinator. I think that that's been an advantage for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Spags, a lot of people think of Spags with just the Giants, and they think of Spags today with the Chiefs. I remember Spags' in-between year with the Saints. I remember Spags with the Rams as the head coach. A lot of this is about fit. It's about finding a complementary fit with your offense and defense and having the schemes match. I think the thing that gives Spags an advantage is that the Chiefs' offense is complementary to him being aggressive, because he knows that they can score at any point, which means he can take chances to get stops. I think that plays into what he does. And then I think him having a lot of experience in a lot of big games also really helps them. I think that's what the 49ers need as well. That's what I would be looking for. And I think that's what they're waiting on, because they don't need a guy to bring anything other than they need to find the right play caller and the right game planner when we're getting into the season.
You know, it's interesting because I said if they were going to hire external, like we would have heard about it by now because of all the extra shuffling, but yet you could flip it around as Kalai Young has and says, if Kyle was hiring from within, the announcement would have been made already, which is a valid point. That's why, like, it's really weird. And I'm going to reserve the right to change this opinion based on what happens if they do bring in an external hire, Vish, but I still think it's going to be internal. Mike Silver tweeted that the belief is it's going to be internal. And that's annoying to me because it speaks to this overall question with the 49ers of, does anything need to change, right? And I think the 49ers believe that no, that nothing needs to change, that they just need to try again. And I think that's the wrong mentality to take with this team. I think they do need to recognize that, like, what we've got here is not working. Doesn't mean we need to overhaul everything, but I think you have to change some things. You're never the same team year to year to year, right? Like in 2021, the thing they changed was Debo just doing everything. And that was a great change. And it made the offense better than it had been even in 2019. I think they were a better offense in 2021 than they were in 2019. Something has to change. And right now, what the 49ers are telling you is the only thing that needed to change was we had to get rid of Steve Wilks. I think that they need to change more than that.
I agree with you. I think that I tweeted this out right after the Super Bowl, and a lot of people take offense to it immediately because when you're having conversations about change, that also includes, hey, they might need to move this guy or might need to move this guy, and people are attached. I'm also attached. I get it. Like when I tweet about it, I'm okay. I think it's an intelligent thought. The moment Rob tweets about trading one of the players that I like on the 49ers, I also get aggravated. So I think it's totally valid. I understand where the point of conversation comes from. The thing is, I'm totally with you. I think at some point, I know people are going to look at it and say, hey, they turned over like 40 different players from the 2019 team that went to the Super Bowl to 2023. But the core and the identity of the team, the way they went about business, the way they win and lose football games is the same exact thing from 2019 to 2023. That's why I look at it and say, hey, you lost the same game. Excuse me. I read the chat. Underscore 187 said, cut the juice. The cut caught my eye. So I said, yeah. But you lost the same game 4 years apart, right? The same exact game that you lost 4 years ago, you lost it again. Something has to be different. I think that you need to change a little bit who you are as a team. And then I asked the simple human dynamics question, Rob. At what point do the Niners look at each other and see the scars? This is 4 out of 5 years where they have lost in pretty tragic fashion in the playoffs, right? You blow a 10-point lead versus Mahomes in 2019. Hey, Jimmy G sucks. We're a young team. We'll be back. In 2020, everybody gets hurt. Everybody got hurt. That's why we didn't make it. We'll be back. In 2021, you have this quarterback situation. It's funny. It's this. You get Jimmy. Everybody believes in Jimmy. Tart dropped the ball. Tart did it. Tart ruined everything. He dropped the ball. That's why they didn't win the Super Bowl. That's why they didn't win in 2021. In 2022, according to them, they were unequivocally the best team. They probably were. Who knows? But Brock Purdy got hurt. We didn't get to see that play out. And then in 2023, everything went right. And you can point to the Dre Greenlaw injury in the Super Bowl, but the Chiefs came into that game without their best offensive lineman in Joe Thuney. They came into that game without Charles Omenihu, who was one of their best defensive players. Like, there were other things that went wrong for the Chiefs. The Niners actually came into that game healthier than the Chiefs, and they still blew that same 10-point lead. And there's no Tart to blame. There's no Jimmy G to blame. It's just the fact that they once again did that. At what point do people like Kittle, who've been around for the whole thing, Juszczyk, who've been around for the whole thing, and they're now old, they've made their money, they're now at the point where their contracts are running out of guaranteed money, they're looking for their next last payday in their career. At what point do those human dynamics start playing into this football team? Because I think one of the most special things over the last 5 years about this group, Rob, is that we've never had to talk about those kinds of things. They've always been together. They've always showed great camaraderie. They've always had the right attitude. They've always had a positive attitude, even when the team has gone through downs and they've gone through low periods, right? 2021, they were 3-5. In 2022, they started the season and the Denver game was disgusting. They had the weird period with the quarterbacks. They've always had an upbeat confidence in each other. They've believed in each other. They've always never let the business come in between them. But that's not the reality of football. It happens to every single football team. The Legion of Boom. The business got in between Earl Thomas. That's why he flicked off Pete Carroll when he broke his leg and left. That's why Richard Sherman ripped the Seahawks when he left and joined the 49ers. That's like, these things happen. This is what happens to football teams with so many veteran players that have done so much, established so much. At what point does it happen to this team? It hasn't happened yet, but I'm asking you the question. Do you think those human dynamics kick in at some point?
I would assume yes, because they are human. Yet I look at this Instagram post from Kyle Juszczyk, which if you're watching on the stream, you can see right now. It's a picture of him in the Super Bowl after he made his catch and, got all pumped up. And it says, delayed, not denied. So maybe it is not going to affect them this year, Vish. I just feel like the Niners are still trying to win the Super Bowl in 2019. Like they're still trying to, like, if they won it this year, it was going to be like, see, we should have won it in 2019.
Right.
We were the better team. We beat the Chiefs again, like all that. I feel like they got to move past that. They got to move past trying to vindicate, we were the best team in 2022. See, like, forget all that. Try to
I
win the
think
Super
they need
Bowl.
to get rid of that culture, by the way. I
Yes.
think there's too many people who are living in who they were in 2019 and how
Yep.
good they were in 2019 on this team. I think there is a changing of the guard. I think we saw that this year when we saw younger players like Purdy and Brandon Ayuk emerge. And they emerged as leaders and they emerged as players that people talk about and they emerged as prominent players on this team. I think that there is a changing of the guard. I suggested, moving one of their big leaders on the team. A lot of people didn't like it, but his contract is not movable, but it's the most movable when we're talking about George Kittle versus Debo versus these other guys. George Kittle is probably the most movable. Not movable either, but the most movable. That's what I suggested. I don't really think that's going to happen. I just threw something out there, but I do think you have this opportunity to, continue this run, but have a fresh leadership. Have guys who haven't had the scars of 2019 and 21. Purdy has just gone through it once. He really looks like you have a franchise quarterback. That's what you feel like right now, right? He's played as good as anybody for how little he's played to start his career statistically. That's inarguable. Nobody's had stats like this to start their career. So you feel like you have something with him. You pay Brandon Ayuk. You have something to build around with him. But I look at it as, Rob, at some point I feel like, hey, they've had this same mindset since 2019. And I feel like that mindset is why they fall short. Why have they blown 3 different 10-point leads in all 3 out of 4 of these games? Like, you can't keep losing the game the same way and be like, no. We're falling short. Something I think with their culture feels like, hey, we're good. We established ourselves here. I mean, you could see it in the Super Bowl week, dude. Like, come on. The coach is slurring his words on Monday before the Super Bowl. These guys are talking about partying the week before the Super Bowl. I don't bring these things up to say don't do that. I don't bring these things up to say that this is why they lost the Super Bowl. No. I bring these things up to say this is the difference in their culture versus the team that won. That's what I'm bringing up. The owner talking about America's game stories the week before the Super Bowl.
You sound like someone who has not fully processed this loss yet, Vish.
I'm so upset. I'm so upset about it still.
There is some fire there. Look, I love it. But I agree.
But I mean, am I not wrong? Like, there were differences. I'm not saying that's why they lost the Super Bowl. See, people are going to look at that and be like, Vish, you're harping at things that had nothing to do with the game. No, I'm pointing to the differences in the lead up to the Super Bowl between them and the team that's won it 3 times in the last 5 years. That's what I'm pointing out.
Corey Soto says, breaking, Kyle announced as 49ers new defensive coordinator. That's hilarious. People think that. Some people think like, oh, he wants to control everything. I think it's the complete opposite. I think he doesn't want to worry about the defense at all. I don't think he worried about it with Saleh. I think he worried about it even less when D'Amico was there, especially in year 2 of D'Amico. I don't think Kyle wants to worry about it at all. But what you're talking about is a mindset thing.
I don't think it's about worrying about it. I think that I think that Steve Wilks didn't fit with the star players on the 49ers. I think that's the other thing in this that we haven't talked about, right? The dynamic that Fred Warner and Nick Bosa were almost too comfortable. Like being like, hey, we weren't put in the right spot, or we weren't prepared for that, or we're not like, these are all subtle things that they would like. It's not that they're putting down Steve Wilks or they're now bad guys or malcontents, bro. It's that they wouldn't do these things to Robert Saleh or D'Amico Ryans even when the opportunity was there. I think Nick Bosa did it only once, where he talked about he was getting chipped a lot. It might have been early 2021. And he talked about them needing chip beaters, and that's a scheme thing. But besides that, they were usually a little more careful. It's, well, why is the defense not playing well? Well, we need to change some things. Or scheme isn't really working. Or they, these little comments they keep making, I think that's the issue. And they need somebody that those two people believe in and respect as well. We can talk about the Shanahan defensive coordinator dynamic all we want, but the star players on this team didn't believe in Wilks. That's the reality.
It's funny how we sort of vacillate back and forth between Kyle Shanahan, wants to control everything. And also Kyle lets the players have too much control, right? What do we say when they ditched the 2-quarterback system with Trey Lance? It was because the veterans complained. Another thing, by the way, that definitely happened that beat writers refused to even ask Kyle Shanahan about on the record. Yet now all of them admit it absolutely happened. And they just report it like we all should have known all along. But anyway,
but that's an unbelievable point, because I do feel like that's used really based on convenience, right? When we want to criticize Kyle, it's Kyle has too much control. But then we want to criticize Kyle in this way, it's Kyle gives up too much control and allows the players. I think what we're seeing is that this defensive coordinator situation is the reality of life in any workplace. You need people to be able to communicate and work together. It's not just being good at your job. And I think that people take Steve Wilks being fired to say that's an indictment that he's a bad defensive coordinator. I don't really look at it like that. I don't think he did a completely awful job this year.
Agreed.
When I look at all things,
look at the numbers.
when I look at what he had to deal with, I don't think he did a completely awful job. And I think that the 49ers star players also didn't play as well as they've played in years past. So I think there's things combined to it. But clearly this didn't work. This dynamic between him, whether it was between him and Kyle, because that dynamic felt weird, but it also felt weird between him and Nick Bosa and him and Fred Warner and all of that. That didn't work. This is a normal happenings in when you're trying to run a business and you're striving for any goal, for anything, when you're working with other people. This is just what happens. I don't think it's a case of Kyle having too much control. I don't think it's a case of Kyle not having enough control. I think it's a case of they tried making it work with a guy that, for whatever reason, between him and them, it just didn't work. And that's the reality of it. I don't think it's really an indictment of either party in this case. And I don't know if that's a popular answer, Rob.
I think that they should have had a better plan for DeMeco Ryans leaving. We were really lucky that he came back for that second year. Remember the Vikings wanted him and he was like, no,
that was Saleh. Or no, you're right. That was DeMeco. That was DeMeco. You're correct. It was between DeMeco, Kevin O'Connell, and then it was between Stefanski, Saleh. My fault.
So,
go ahead.
It was like, hey, he's coming back. Boy, it's the exact situation that the Lions are in with Ben Johnson right now. Everybody thought Ben Johnson was going to leave and become a head coach. He's coming back. If you're Detroit right now, more than likely he's gone after 2024. So you have to have a backup plan for your OC now. The 49ers did not have a backup plan for after DeMeco Ryans left, especially.
So I have a different take on it for you. What if DeMeco was just exceptional? Look at the way DeMeco has shot up the coaching.
I think he is exceptional.
Right? Like DeMeco went from QC in 2017 to head coach in 2023. And I think that with Saleh, the reason they were good with Saleh walking out and all of that is they had built so much talent. And I think they looked at DeMeco and I think they thought even then DeMeco is exceptional. DeMeco right away, I know CJ Stroud looks like the freaking man, but DeMeco right away in Houston, Houston had no credibility, firing coach after coach. They're signing every player on a one-year deal. Nobody wants to stay there. Nobody wants to play there. Now it's the number one landing spot. Is it not? Everybody's talking about this guy going to Houston and that guy going to Houston. He did it in a year, him and CJ Stroud. So what if DeMeco is just truly exceptional? And talking about replacing DeMeco, maybe you don't find another DeMeco. Maybe Steve Wilks' issue is that he's just good. He's not DeMeco.
But the point is, how could your plan have been, well, we'll keep everybody else and we'll just grab a random guy and hope he fits? Shouldn't you have known that the person, we have to make sure we have somebody that
how do
fits?
You know that, Rob? How do you know that? Right? You're taking a chance. You're taking a chance with the personality.
Well, then,
you're taking a chance.
But if you don't know that, then you have to let somebody bring in their own staff.
But I think that's what they're changing this year, right? So we can talk about the things that went wrong with Wilks, but I think what they're doing differently this year is I think last year they went into the process. Wilks was there. He had the perfect name. People were thinking from the perspective that he might get a head coaching job the subsequent year because he had done a good job with Carolina, and people thought he deserved the Carolina job. All of those things played into it. The Niners were getting paraded for having two defensive coordinators already getting a head coaching job. It felt like a perfect fit from that standpoint. And maybe they went through the process too fast. Maybe they assumed too many things with Steve Wilks that now they're not assuming. Now they're actually going about the process and being like, hey, when we went from DeMeco to Wilks, we thought all of these things were a given. We took it for granted and we were wrong about it. Let's not do that this time. And maybe that's why it's so quiet on this front. Because they to this day, they haven't told us what went wrong on Steve Wilkes other than a couple of vague explanations from Shanahan when they ultimately parted ways. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why it's so quiet, because they are trying to go through the process fixing those things right now.
But they're not really changing. They're still trying to find a guy that fits their system. And what I'm saying is, if you didn't already know that you had a guy that would fit, then stop trying to find somebody that fits and change the whole staff.
But
Change
Rob,
everybody.
you can't have it both ways, right? Because if they change the scheme and they change the defense, and all of a sudden this defense that you've built around, we agree the two best players on the defense are Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, right?
Yes.
Right? And they've built the defense around those two guys. If you talk about a scheme that uses Fred Warner the best you can use Fred Warner, it's this one. If you talk about a scheme that uses Nick Bosa the best you can use Nick Bosa, it's this one.
Is it?
So
how do we know that?
I mean, you're talking about an off-ball linebacker that's
no.
able to
I
play
agree
sideline
on
to sideline.
I agree on Fred, not on. How do we know that about Bosa?
I mean, it's you go get the quarterback first. It's run game on the way to get the quarterback. You're constantly put wide in these great rushing positions. They get him one-on-ones. I mean, this is a pass rusher's dream. If you're talking about a 4-3 pass rusher that's looking to just rush the passer, this is the place to do it. It hurt his brother. It hurt his brother to change this scheme to go to the 3-4. His brother doesn't like standing up. It hurt his career.
I certainly didn't think that Nick Bosa was in the best possible scheme last year. I mean, 10.5 sacks is a good year for sure. But if you're telling me that's the best possible way to use Nick Bosa, then we're paying Nick Bosa too much money.
But we're talking about two different things. The schematics of the defense was the exact same. The usage of Nick Bosa was not as efficient as years past because they didn't get him as many one-on-ones, right? But the schematics of the defense, the front they play, all of those things were the exact same as in years past. Either way, we can choose to disagree. But in my opinion, I will say that this is the best way to use those two players. You bring in somebody else who changes the defense, and he changes who the defense is built around and how they use those two players. If Fred Warner isn't playing as well, if Nick Bosa isn't playing, I mean, dude, we heard it this year. The guy came with no offseason, and because people were upset about when he got paid and the fact that he wanted to get paid, oh man, every week, Bosa's not that guy. Bosa doesn't do this. Bosa doesn't do that. The guy plays outstanding in the playoffs, and people are like, he didn't have a sack. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. So it would happen both ways. I feel like if they changed the scheme, people would complain and be like, you had this thing that was working. You had these two players who were first-team All-Pros in this scheme. It was working. Why would you change that? But then when you try to bring somebody and integrate them into the scheme, we're going through these changes, and you're like, don't do that. I feel like you have to find something that works. It's not, this is the way to do it. It's not, this is the way to do it. And I think they found something that didn't work last year, and now they need to go to the process of fixing that. And the problem is they're not telling us how they're fixing it or why they're fixing it or what they need to fix either. So we have to assume and have faith that they are doing that.
The two ways that you admit that things need to change are through your words and through your actions. The 49ers have not really said anything needs to change, but their actions tell us that they needed to change a defensive coordinator because they fired theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they need to tell us more has to change or show us with their actions. Right now, the only action that they've done is Steve Wilkes. There has been nothing on the offensive side of the ball. Hell, Kyle Shanahan has doubled down twice since the Super Bowl ended. Everything I did was good. All my decisions were sound. So what they're telling you is they're just going to pack it up, try again. We'll slot somebody else into the defensive coordinator. Even if it doesn't work, we'll still be third in points allowed in the entire league, and we'll try again. And that is not reassuring. That is not, I don't think, what the fan base wants to hear, right? It's the same thing with the Cowboys fans. They're sitting there saying, my God, we're bringing Mike McCarthy back. We're just going to do the same thing over again. That's how it feels with the 49ers. Now, obviously, the Niners are on a higher level than the Cowboys, but that is not what the fan base wants to hear right now. I mean,
they're the Cowboys that go an extra round in the playoffs.
Yeah, right. Dreams 24 says get rid of the back to Niner football mindset. I almost feel like you have to reestablish it. Like, don't, almost kind of like start from scratch from a mindset, from a culture perspective. You got to bring in some guys that are hungry. Some guys like you've talked about, Vish, that haven't been paid, that aren't on their second contract, looking for a third contract. Some guys that are trying to get after it with something to prove.
They need
They
to get
need that.
younger. Yeah. Look, dude, look at their defensive line. You know, it's crazy. And I brought this up, and a lot of people got mad when I brought it up this offseason. But they're going to be right back in the well. They got to build up this defensive line again. They got
Yeah.
to get young, hungry, and deep. And that's where they got to start. That's where this offseason is going to start. Guess where I'm looking straight away? 31st pick in the draft.
D-line.
Which defensive lineman can they take?
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
they need one.
Randy Gregory is going to be a free agent. Chase Young is going to be a free agent.
Do you even want to bring those guys back?
Well, no, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
in
but
terms of
you're
actual
right.
bodies, Cleveland Farrell, free agent.
Man, this
Kevin
is where
Givens.
it would be nice if you knew if you had something in Drake Jackson, huh?
That's what I mean. A free agent, Randy Gregory, Chase Young, Kevin Givens, Cleveland Farrell. And Farrell's obviously coming off an injury also. Like, they literally need bodies. So we can complain about, oh my God, they always draft defensive linemen. They have to fill the roster.
Yeah. And that's their spot. In fact, I would say one of the things, even though they played great in the Super Bowl, it is the thing that disappointed all of us.
Yep.
All of these names on this defensive line, and it didn't feel like that group that would dominate and close a game for them.
Well, think about it. You don't sign Randy Gregory unless you recognize there's a problem on the defensive line. We got to get better. You don't trade for Chase Young later that season unless you say, we're not getting as much as we thought out of the defensive line. So they acknowledge, they saw it themselves that, hey, we need more here. They did the best they could during the year. I think they probably tried to trade for Brian Burns. I'm sure they looked into it. But
I don't think it's like that, because I think Chase Young, Randy Gregory proved that I don't think they need these names. They need these young, hungry depth pieces, guys who are going to rush within a rotation, guys who are going to be able to rush in a role.
But what I'm saying is, like, they saw that it was a weakness.
Oh, yeah, my bad. That's my bad. I missed your point. Your point was that they made it better, not that they went and got that guy. Yeah.
They were trying.
Yeah.
They recognize. And now that's even more so because they have so many free agents. So I agree. I think I wouldn't be stunned if they took a D lineman in the first round. Would you?
No. I think that's where they'll go. And their offensive line, they've drafted a lot of young players. They've been slowly accumulating a lot of young players that are developing. But at what point do you decide? At what point do you decide whether they're good enough or they're not good enough? Right? At what point would Spencer Burford, for example, right? He's had 2 years where he's been developing. He's a very talented player, but 2 years where you've been splitting snaps with him, he's not been very good. But he's a young developing player. Do you waste 2 years of investment and go get another guard, or do you continue? How much better do you feel like he can get? These are the type of decisions they got to make.
Is he really developing? You had to split time with him last year. You had to split time with him this year. You know what that tells me? He's the same freaking guy. If he's still splitting time, he's the same guy. Like, 49er fans, I shouldn't say 49er fans. Maybe it's 49er fans. Maybe it's Kyle, whatever.
It's like Vish.
There's not development with football players. Like, yes, there is. Guys improve, but it's not. Guys in the NFL don't generally go from, we can't even play this guy at all.
That's the thing.
He's going to be a starter.
No, I disagree. In the offensive line position, we're talking about a steep learning curve of college versus NFL, because you're talking about college where they're spread out. They run outside zone. They run inside zone. They major in like 2 runs and they run those same runs. There's like 2 protection calls because everything is spread out. So that means you're either 5-0 or you have like 2 protection calls. Then the strength advantage, like, dude, if you don't play SEC, like the defensive lineman you play week to week versus who you play even in the SEC, it's not even close. Like, I do think for an offensive lineman, year 1 to year 3, it's not even close in terms of how confident they are, how strong they are. Like, there is they get way, 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 way better.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, give me another offensive lineman, especially one drafted in the second round, who didn't play at all, who couldn't even be active on the game day roster, and then went on to become a starter, and then went on to become a really good player.
I mean, Aaron Banks went from being inactive to being a starter.
Right, that's it. He's the only one on this friggin' team, because that's what I'm saying.
You give me a little bit of time to think about guards. I'm sure I could give you some.
I don't think you can.
I think
yes, guys improve year 1, year 2, year 3. Yes, but do they improve that much to, oh my God, we get nothing out of a draft class after we take them, and then all of a sudden in year 3 they're really good players? Like, no. Danny Gray.
It's not about being really good. It's about being serviceable. Being a starter, being capable.
Even guys
how many really good offensive linemen are there in the NFL right now?
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but what I'm
How
saying
many
is
really good offensive lines would you say there are in the NFL right now?
really good, probably 5 to 6.
5 to 6. Detroit, Philly. Who else you naming?
Oh, okay, I didn't know this was going to be the offensive line show. Detroit, Philly. Let me see. I think Baltimore had decent
Ooh, Bay
offensive
Area
line.
baller got you there, but that's a first round pick in Colton Miller. I said Garrett Bowles too, but then Rob clarified by going outside of the first round. He threw that big old qualifier out there.
Not my first rodeo, Vish.
Yeah.
Um, well, we're getting into a larger issue, and it's good. It's a
That's
good
what I'm
time to get
saying though.
into it.
The offensive line play across the NFL is not very good. So
We're
when
get,
you have a starting guy, that's pretty good.
but just because you start a guy doesn't mean like Colt McKivitz was a starting offensive lineman this year. He's not any good. He's not any good, but he started. He's a starter. But like that, you could start me at offensive line. It doesn't mean I'm good.
You know that's not my point. You know there's a difference between a guy who's not like great, not bad, and he's just like serviceable fine, which is what I'm describing as a starter, and then a guy who is starting and is not a starter. Aaron
Colton
Banks is a starter. He's just not fantastic. He's just not bad, terrible either. Colton McKivitz is starting. He is not a starter.
we're getting into a broader question, a broader comment about the 49ers. And it's one that I'm fascinated to learn about going into this year because Adam Peters is gone. He was by far their most important person when it came to the draft. So now, does the 49ers draft philosophy change? Does their scouting process change? How does it change? And the reason I bring this up, Vish, is because the 49ers have this really weird habit of either hitting a home run on a guy or getting absolutely nothing out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they had, everyone talks about, well, the Trey Lance trade hurt because they lost those 3 number ones, which obviously, yes, it hurts. But really, the problem was not just that. It's that the guys that they did pick with the picks that they did have not been able to give them anything. Right? Cameron Latu didn't give them anything. Robert Beal.
We could say the jury's out on 23, right? Because they were all rookies. But look at 22. You're talking about 6 biscuits and Brock Purdy right now.
Right. I mean, Drake Jackson, nothing. Like to the point where he was a complete afterthought not that long after he was picked. Ty Davis Price, nothing. Danny Gray, nothing. Spencer Burford, okay.
He started, so he's something.
Samuel Womack, nothing. Nick Sakel, nothing. Kalia Davis, nothing. Tariq Castro Fields, nothing. Again, we're not talking about we're like league average players. We're not talking about. We're talking about literally they've gotten nothing out of. Trey Lance, nothing. Aaron Banks,
they haven't even like the Burford contribution, for example. It's not that he's the greatest player, but a 5th round pick who starts a few games for you, that's
something. Yeah.
Big deal for getting a starting player from that. But like Ty Davis Price, who can't even really make your roster, Kalia Davis, who's been basically hurt, like this, that's the difference Rob's talking about. He's not saying they should have picked, in the middle rounds, Tom Brady with every single one of these picks. He's saying that either they have a guy who completely outperforms expectations, like Brock Purdy, who's like completely out of the realm of possibility of what a 7th round pick should be, or you have a guy who gives them like, he doesn't even make the team kind of nothing. Like they can't even get special team snaps out of him. That's
where the depth is hurt. It's there. It's that your misses, how they talk about like good teams can win their clunkers. Like your quote unquote clunker draft picks can't get you anything. Ambry Thomas, nothing. Jalen Moore, nothing. Diamondor Lenore, fantastic for a 5th round pick. Amazing. Hufanga, amazing. Even Elijah Mitchell, amazing.
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell was a good pick.
So they have it on
Aaron Banks was a good pick too. 2nd round pick who started back-to-back seasons, like 30 plus games.
Yeah. To me, it's not just starting. It's how good are you in those starts. To me, a 2nd round pick shouldn't be a league average player.
I think starting in the NFL is tough, man.
But I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm talking about like 2nd round pick. Like Debo was a 2nd round pick. That's the type of talent you can find.
Debo is a complete home run, though, for a 2nd round pick. He's not your average 2nd round pick, doesn't make first team all pro.
Your average 1st round pick.
Does your average 2nd round pick does start 30 games in the NFL? That's a great statistical project. Somebody do that.
Get on
What
that,
is the
Vish.
average number of starting games for a player picked in each round in the NFL?
Look at the 2019 draft, how much work that draft class is doing. Bosa, Debo, Greenlaw. And if you want to throw Wisnowski in there,
I mean,
okay.
they got school to play some for them.
I mean, yeah, school was, even after they took school, it was like, well, we know he sucks, but as long as he takes a long time to suck, we're okay with that. It was like the best description for an offensive lineman that I heard. McGlinchey, of course, 2018. Fred Warner, home run. Tarvarius Moore, they got
Nothing. Street was a rotational player. He was
DJ Reed,
fine.
great pick.
Yeah, but they didn't get anything out of that. Julian Taylor was a good player. Richie James was pretty good. Marcel Harris played for them for a while.
The point is,
That was a good draft. 2018 was a hell of a draft.
are we going to see a change in the 49ers draft philosophy? How
No.
they draft evaluation? Or do you think it's going to be more of the same, kind of all or nothing?
No, it's going to be the same, right? The reason I give so much of their drafting credit to Shanahan is not because I think Shanahan is going in and scouting and doing all the dirty work on every single player ever and coming up with who they draft and who they don't. The reason I give him the credit is because, Rob, if you notice, the infrastructure within organizations doesn't go through wholesale changes when leadership does. And I think that's an important thing to observe. Notice how scouts in an organization don't really get fired, even though the coaches and the GMs change. What changes is the assignment philosophy in terms of what they're doing. And why I give Shanahan the credit for the Niners scouting is because they have a clear image of everything and vision they're looking for at every position. They have a clear vision in terms of what they're looking for in terms of intangible traits, in terms of tangible traits, and then in terms of actual football ability. What positions can the guy play? What techniques are we asking to do? They have all of that organized. They have a clear vision on how they develop players who fit those exact molds, that checks the boxes that they're looking to check. They have they have that organizational infrastructure. Now, all of these scouts who were finding these players before Shanahan existed before, they didn't have the infrastructure before Shanahan. He's brought that. That's why I give him the credit. That's why even though Adam Peters might have been a talented talent evaluator, he might have been a guy that had a good eye for seeing things. I think that fundamentally this organization is what Shanahan wants. It's his vision. It's his philosophy. It's his offense, his defense, his team, his organization. Everything starts from him. I don't think anything changes with him at the top. He's the guy that does everything. He's the guy. The buck ultimately stops at him. He's their Bill Belichick. He's their Andy Reid. He's that for them.
Yes, I agree. Like, it ultimately stops with Kyle for sure. But Peters was a strong voice in the room, and everybody has things they like when they're scouting, tendencies, traits, whatever the case may be. My impression of how it works essentially with the 49ers is that like the GM Lynch and Peters and that crew and the scouts and all those guys do their work, and then they present what they think is the best possible plan to Kyle. And then Kyle looks at the film and he evaluates that. But if you're Kyle and you're like, I'm not quite sure about this guy, you're going to go to Adam Peters and you're going to be like, hey, I'm kind of on the fence about this guy. What do you think? Well, that guy is not gone. Or that guy is not there anymore, I should say. So I don't know. I'm hopeful.
If Kyle needed that, though, they could have made that guy stay.
Well, I'm not saying necessarily it's a good or bad thing that Peters is gone. I'm just saying it's going to change. It's going to be different.
But that's what I'm saying. I understand what you're saying. My counterpoint to that is I don't think they necessarily valued that. And I know that I've been come across almost as an Adam Peters hater.
Yes,
at times when I'm like, yeah, like what does this guy actually do for us to give this just outsized amount of credit for him? But my point really in that is just more so that I don't think the Niners valued his contributions as much as we all like to make it out to be. For whatever reason, when we tell the stories of the 49ers, Adam Peters, for example, has anybody seen Lord of the Rings? Yes. If you read the Lord of the Rings books, right, Legolas isn't that prevalent a character. But if you watch the movies, Orlando Bloom turns him into the coolest freaking elf of all time, and that's the guy everybody wants to be and everybody wants to see. So then the movies turn him into this character that everybody thinks is the most important guy in the books, and he's so relevant and all of that. This is the nerdiest thing I've ever said on stream, but this is big time nerd 3D. That's what Adam Peters is. None of us actually knew what he was, but he was just this character that people in the Niners media decided to tell the story and be like, that's the good guy. That's the guy. That's the good guy. Like, that's the guy we're going to sit here and just be like, well, let's give him credit and all of these things. And that's what this is. They've just decided to make him this character that we're just giving a role. We're just giving, like, you did all of these things. It's just a token like, hey, here's your contribution. We won't give it to Martin Mayhew. We won't give it to Rand Carthon. They can go get hired by other teams. But here you are, Adam Peters.
So here's my question. By the way, I like this comment from Eric. Let's be honest, it's going to be nothing but running backs and defensive tackles. Well done, Eric. Let me ask you this. Would you rather the Niners draft success continue the way it has with, some big misses and some big hits? Or would you rather see things kind of reach equilibrium where you sort of have less home run guys, but also less complete whiffs?
Oh, I'd have it continue.
You would.
The 22 draft looks disgusting at the moment, but if you look at where they are from 17 to 23, I mean, when you're talking about what a crapshoot the draft is, and like even good drafting teams, how inconsistent it can be, how up and down it can be in terms of nailing it, I think overall, dude, they're probably above average. I'm very happy with what they're doing.
That's a fair point because, some people don't like the draft. I love the draft. And when they say, how do you like the draft? My answer is always, if you want to look, the answer to why every single team got good and why every single good team got bad, it's the same answer. It's the draft. Why the Niners died out after the, Harbaugh era is because their drafts were horrible.
Yeah.
And why did the Seahawks get good? Because they had like 2 or 3 incredible drafts.
Pete Carroll had the Jimmy Johnson effect. Came straight from college. Everybody he recruited. Watch Harbaugh. They're going to draft really well the next couple years because it's everybody Harbaugh's recruited. He knows all of these guys in and out.
So that's why I love the draft. And that's why the 49ers have built the roster that they have because of the guys that we talked about, right? Because they found Kittle so late and Warner. And obviously they got high-end talent early also, like Bosa and Debo. That's a fair point. But, Vish, this roster now is in a different position than it was in 2017. It's not devoid of talent. It's not needing 2, 3 elite players that you find.
But when we're talking about draft picks missing, and I know you're going to bring to a different point, but I want to add this there. That has to be included, Rob. Because when we're talking about draft picks like Kittle in 2017, not Kittle, because Kittle was an example where he came in and he was exceptional from day one. Everybody said he was exceptional. They traded Vance McDonald immediately. He became the starter. He's an isolated example. But when we're talking about other guys, they came on to bad teams where they got opportunities to play. So even when they were young, they were on the field right away. That's how they grew. That's how they got better. Now to even get on the field for the 49ers, you already have to be at a certain level, right? There's not as many opportunities when you're a veteran team and the margins are slimmer for young players to come in and develop and get better and make mistakes. Even though you don't believe in player development, I believe in players.
That's not what I said.
I'm messing with you. But I'm saying that there's not as many opportunities for that as well. So I think that's where it's even harder for their draft picks when you're talking about it, because it's like maybe a guy like Sam Womack, if he got to play the last 2 years, sure, he might have made a lot of mistakes, but if you had no other options, he might be a terrific corner by year 3 because he got to play 2 years and he got to get better by playing and he got to get more confidence. So that's also a factor in their draft picks not being as successful because the 2019, 17, 18 guys, they got to grow into being stars. Not all of them were Bosa, where year 1 they walked in and they were just the freaking best player in the NFL. It took time for all of them, and some of them got that time and some of them didn't. Now I'm going to let you continue to your next point. My bad.
Well, now I forgot my original point. I'm just going to respond to what you just said. That is a good point, but also like, is there almost too quick of a trigger where Kyle's like, "Oh, you're a rookie. You made a mistake. We don't have time for you to develop. We can't play you. That's it." And then your development gets stunted because like you can talk about, oh, there's not a lot of opportunities, but there are opportunities. Right guard, right tackle, center, all those are places where the 49ers could upgrade next year in the draft. You can't tell me.
I don't think that though.
You can't tell me that there is not a better right tackle than Colton McKivitz in this draft. You're telling me that there's not? I don't believe that.
Okay. Here's the thing with this. You're going to hate this answer, but this is the reality of it. When I talked about that steep learning curve for the offensive lineman, man, you're talking about a situation where you can draft a guy in the 3rd round that has more physical talent than Colton McKivitz. I know a lot of people were talking about the BYU guy the Colts took, Blake Freeland. He's 6'8", right? He's got a leaner body than Colton McKivitz. He has a little more physical juice, tangible gifts than Colton McKivitz. Colton McKivitz would play over that guy year one. That's the problem. The learning curve for an offensive lineman comes to if I'm a win now team and I'm saying I'm going to invest in a right tackle, if I'm taking a 4th round right tackle that's not all that talented anyway. Like, let's say they looked at Blake Freeland and they said, I'm not even sure that guy can start in the NFL. Let's say they look at Colton McKivitz and they say, we don't look at him as a starting right tackle, but given our situation, he knows our scheme. He's cheap. He's who we're going to have to start. Like, they're not going to then use a 4th round pick for a guy that's probably not going to play over Colton McKivitz right away. And that's the problem. When you're talking about even the offensive linemen that are the best, even the 1st round guys, like the reason Colton McKivitz was brought up by Bay Area Ball, the reason I brought up Garrett Bowles is these 1st round guys even have a high margin for how long it takes for them to develop. Even Sewell is one of the better left tackle prospects I've ever seen. And he took a year. Tristan Wirfs is the rare one that comes out and he's like that right away. Trent Williams comes out, Tyron Smith. But these are rare players.
But
so when you're talking about taking a 4th round right tackle, man, and you're talking about him playing year one, it's hard. It doesn't work like that.
I'm not talking about drafting a guy in the 4th round. Draft him in the 1st round. I don't care where
they didn't have it, though. They didn't have a 1st round pick.
Well, they got one this year. That's what I mean. Like,
and M. Patel is bringing up Staley. Do you not remember 49ers fans how they felt about Joe Staley when he got his extension in 2010? Trent Baalke had to defend him getting his extension.
Guys could make the Hall of Fame, arguably.
Right.
But what you're talking about,
people thought he sucked until Harbaugh came. People thought Joe Staley sucked. This fan base thought that.
Well, also, too, don't forget, Joe Staley was a converted tight end. Like he might have had a longer development than some other people. But my point is this.
He was also good, but people didn't understand that. He was playing on a bad team, and people decided to make him bad.
That's why I also refuse to, I don't give grades on the offensive line every week when I do my grades, because I don't know what the freak I'm looking at when it comes to offensive linemen. But my point is this, you're talking about, oh yeah, Penei Sewell, blah, blah, blah. There might be plays where Colton McKivitz would do a better job than Penei Sewell in year one. But I'm not asking the rookie to come in and be perfect. But I feel like Kyle treats it like if they're not perfect, if they make rookie mistakes, they can't play. I mean, hell, he benched Jair Brown for Logan freaking Ryan.
But that's what happens in the Super Bowl, dude. Rookie mistake. The veteran right guard that you've been riding with in the playoffs, right? The guy who doesn't make as many protection errors, the guy who's not as talented as Spencer Burford gets knocked out of the game. Now you go with Burford. He busts the protection on the biggest 3rd down of the game.
And is also not a rookie, by the way. This is year 2 of Spencer Burford.
Okay, but we're talking about a young player, right? These are the mental mistakes.
Who had the interception to start the second half? The rookie in Jair Brown. Again.
But Logan Ryan played terrific game at nickel.
You played both of them. But
yeah.
My thing is I feel like they're so quick to be like, oh, win now. Win now. We got to get rid of our quarterback that we took 3rd overall in 2021, because win now and improving your roster through the draft are two conflicting things.
See, you are less scarred by this. I actually like the fact that they take it slower now with their young players.
Oh no,
because I'm still scarred from the fact that they thought 3 games of Adrian Colbert and he had dreadlocks sticking out of his helmet and wore number 38. So the Niners fans were like, "Hey, this is Deshaun Goldson," and they had him turn into a starting safety. Josh Rosen has a highlight play in his career thanks to Adrian Colbert. Josh Rosen. If you look for Josh Rosen highlights, there wouldn't be a YouTube video until Adrian Colbert bid on play action and jumped a post route for Christian Kirk for Josh Rosen to have one highlight.
I just feel like they have no tolerance for rookie mistakes, and so they don't play guys, and then they're like, oh, we always have this need. And it's like, well, how do you expect guys, if you're talking about guys improving year 1 to year 3, how do you expect that to happen?
But I think that's what happens with offensive linemen. I think that's why they're in a tricky spot.
That's what happens to everybody.
If you don't build up your offensive line, it's very tough to just add guys on the fly. The Chiefs got really lucky because they nailed the Trey Smith pick. They nailed the Creed Humphrey pick. They got 2 mid-round guys who are all pros. And then they paid big money for Tooney. And they still haven't figured out their tackles. Ever since Mitch Schwartz retired, they've been going from Fisher to Orlando Zeus Brown to Jawan Taylor to Donovan Smith, and they've all been terrible.
Yeah, you know what they figured out?
About their tackles enough because they figured out number 15. Yeah, I know. And Go ahead. My
They
bad.
they don't have to figure it out because they don't call holding in the Super Bowl, so it doesn't
Oh
matter.
yeah,
The
well
guys can just hold.
that too. That too.
Any tackle
That
could
too.
be good if they're allowed
That
to
too.
hold the hell
That
out
too.
of
They also
people.
don't call false start on Jawan Taylor. But Jason Tillman says, I don't remember Staley ever sucking. Maybe I forgot. Staley never sucked. I brought that up to say people thought Staley sucked. At the time, if you go and remember, people thought Staley didn't deserve his extension in 2010. And Trent Baalke, I think, was the one who gave it to him, and he defended it at the time. He's like, no, this is one of the better tackles in the NFL. I remember he got beat by Kyle Vandenbosch on a strip sack when they played in Ford Field in 2011. People were like, this same old Joe Staley, blah, 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 blah. He didn't get the credit for being a really good player. He was a good player by 2009, 2010. He didn't get that credit even at that time.
We don't need to go back and relitigate Joe Staley.
I will. I hate when people like sit here and they're like, okay, see, everybody knew Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse. Good thing Kyle put him there so that he could turn around his career. When you told me he wasn't in the freaking doghouse when I told you he was in the doghouse.
And you're not meaning me specifically. You're meaning...
I'm meaning you. You do that all the time, right?
What?
No, I'm kidding. I'm messing with you.
Yeah.
He took insults so fast.
I'm frustrated with the drafting, with the philosophy. Like, where they benched Jair Brown for Logan Ryan. Like, and Jair Brown really didn't do anything to deserve the benching. Dude,
I look at it and say maybe the NFC Championship game versus the Rams go different if Ambry Thomas is benched in favor of Dante Johnson, who played better than Ambry Thomas could have played, in my opinion, versus Green Bay the week before.
Every player is going to make mistakes. Every player. Why is it okay if a veteran guy makes a mistake, but not a young guy? That doesn't make any sense.
He's been there. He's done that. I like going with the veteran.
What? Oh, okay. So did you like it when Logan Ryan completely missed?
I wanted Logan Ryan to start at nickel in the Super Bowl. I said it after the NFC Championship game.
When Logan Ryan completely missed the tackle, and what was it? The Lions broke out like a 53-yard run. That was totally
that was
cool.
Green Bay. That was Green Bay.
Or whoever it was.
I also saw Jair Brown miss quite a few tackles in the alley over the course of the beginning.
Because young guys make mistakes too, but for some reason, those are worse. Those mistakes are worse.
It's not worse, but I'm just saying, like, that mistake also happens. I'm more confident in the guy that I've seen it do it consistently. But Nick Eller has a good question for us. Please pull this up.
All right. Hold on. I want to get to this one because, sorry, Corey's been waiting. If this season is another failure, good all the time without having to build, like, tear it down also implies that it's going to take years to get back to where the 49ers are right now. I don't want to go back to the bad old times. I really, really don't. I like being in the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl every year. So I'm not a tear it down guy, but it's not just tear it down or do nothing. There's a world of nuance in the middle. We can live in the middle somewhere.
100%. They can like retool this. It's not even a rebuild. It's a retooling because they still have young players. That's what Rob and I are saying. It's not that the 49ers are fully old. Parts of their team is old, but parts of their team is still like really young and really talented. And that core still exists. It's just a slightly different core than it was 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The core that existed 4 years ago included names who are probably not in the top 5 names when we say the core today. And that's what we're pointing out. And that's what we're saying. Retool that.
Yeah, I think the core now needs to be Brock, Ayuk, Bosa. Yeah. Those to me are the three. And if I don't put Hufanga in there because I don't think Hufanga's as good as those guys.
Warner's probably in there with his
contract. Warner's still pretty young. Yes.
Yeah.
It needs to, but to me, it needs to be Brock's team. It doesn't need to be. It can't be Kittle's team anymore or Debo's team anymore. It needs to be Brock's
team. And it can't be CMC's either. And here's why. Not because CMC isn't excellent. We're talking about a Hall of Fame talent. It's because he's played 6 years in the NFL. He's been hurt for 2 of them. The other 4, he's had 300-plus touches in all of them. He's coming close to 30.
Yeah.
He's starting to get there. Longevity is not unlimited for running backs. As great as he's been, as much of an outlier as he is, we're talking about 4 years of 300-plus touches. That's a lot of load for a running back. You can't just put your reliance on putting everything in his basket because of that.
Exactly. It's not because he's not good enough. It's just because the nature of the position and the amount of tread on the tires. You just have to acknowledge that. You don't want to put your eggs in that basket. So I agree with you. And by the way, Christian McCaffrey is freaking amazing. Like
That's
amazing.
one of the 5 best players in the NFL.
Doesn't turn 20. He turns 28 in June. So he'll be
Mhm.
28, which I think honestly you could probably count on 1 to maybe 2 more years of peak CMC. And I think, by the way, I think he's a player that's going to age really well because he's very versatile. He could do a lot of things. But we're talking like, I mean, the dude had 23 touchdowns this year. Like that kind of a player is probably only around for 1 or 2 more years. So you have to put your team in the hands of Brock and Ayuk. Are going to be here, you would presume, 3, 4, 5 years.
And he's also played 2 long playoffs now. So that's 6 games that he's played extra in the last 2 years as well.
Yep.
Shorter offseason, shorter recovery. This isn't anything against me doubting him. It's just the realities of his position and the amount of touches he's had in his career.
21 touchdowns. Sorry, didn't mean to get that number wrong. But I think
don't disrespect Jerry Rice like that.
Right.
That's still his record.
Yes. So let's get to this question from Nick Eller, YouTube channel member. By the way, if you want to become a YouTube channel member, please do. It's less than $3 a month. You get custom emojis, membership badges. You get priority comment response. If you want to go to the next tier, the Good as Gold tier, you get early access to our 49ers in 5 news report that comes out every weekday morning. You get access to that as soon as it's done instead of having to wait till the next morning. So please do. Nick asks, why is the offensive line coach, that would be Chris Forster, still employed? I happen to love Chris Forster, Vish.
Yeah, I think he's objectively done a good job.
So I have a soft spot for him because he's his press conferences are unbelievable. They're entertaining. They're informative. They're educational. And I watch those every single week. I learn a lot from him. And I told him that when I interviewed him at the Super Bowl. I was like, dude, thank you so much, because I love every time you give a press conference because I learned something about the team. But I think that some people
watched a super cool clinic too with him breaking down the Niners run game from last year. And I went through it last year. I'm going to watch it again this year, but he is so smart.
I think that some people would say, and I'm not among these people, but I think maybe Nick would say, and Nick, I don't mean to speak for you, so if I'm wrong, hit me in the chat, that the Niners line has not really gotten any better. It's been really, Trent Williams is really good, but everybody else has just kind of been.
Yeah, but you got to give him ingredients. He's making chicken, you know what, out of chicken, you know what, right
chicken
now.
Salad. You could say chicken salad. That's
okay,
not
fine. Fine. He's making chicken salad out of chicken, you know what, right now. Okay, like Trent Williams, one of the most talented players at the offensive line position we've ever seen. Him aside, Banks is, I mean, he's not, this isn't Quentin Nelson. This isn't Larry Allen. This is pretty average, talented guy, pretty average player. Brendel is below average, talented center. He's playing, slightly below average, whatever. Burford is a very young player, has some physical skills.
Burford
but again, we're talking about
stinks.
we're talking about a 5th round guard. And then McKivitz is not your ideal choice to start at tackle in terms of talent wise in the NFL. And they got the most that they could get. There's no more to squeeze out of that orange. That's really their situation. It's not like they've been giving him assets the way they've invested into Kasarik, right? Kasarik is getting Nick Bosa and Chase Young and Samson Ebukam and these guys. I'm sure you would have a different opinion of Chris Forrester if they, had 3 different 1st-round picks for him. So I think that's really the thing with, and they're yeah.
I like this comment from Emiliano, but Kyle chose that chicken bleep, Vish. Those players didn't just magically appear on the field.
But that's the reality. You have a salary cap. You have to invest in certain things. You have to invest in other things. This team has gone to the Super Bowl. They've gone to the NFC Championship game in 3 straight years with this offensive line. It's not held them back until it has held them back. And when we talk about it holding them back, here's what we never say, right? We say in 2021, the 49ers offensive line sucked. I told everybody. Guess what we didn't say? The team that beat them had a worse offensive line than them in 2021. The team that they played in the Super Bowl had the worst offensive line in the NFL in the Cincinnati Bengals. Last year, the two good offensive lines, right? They went to the playoffs, right? The Eagles' offensive line, are we going to find Jason Kelce, who's going to the Hall of Fame? Lane Johnson's going to the Hall of Fame. Mailata is one of the shocking finds in NFL history, going from a rugby player to a franchise-level left tackle. Landon Dickerson was a high pick, and Amani Sulatalo was also a 2nd-round or 3rd-round pick. So it was like they had a highly invested, good offensive line, and that was 1 year they had it. The Chiefs' offensive line, here's the secret about the Chiefs' offensive line. Nobody tells you because they have Patrick Mahomes. Their tackles suck. They stink. Juwan Taylor and Donovan Smith suck. If those two guys were the tackle for the 49ers, we'd be talking about them every single day. We didn't talk about them. Why? They had Patrick Mahomes.
15.
Right? Creed Humphrey was a freaking I can't describe me shooting a basketball where the basketball, good shooters, they shoot at the same spot every time. Even their misses are good misses. My misses hit the backboard here, hit this side of the rim, that side of the rim. That's what Creed Humphrey was snapping the ball this year. It doesn't matter.
He had some brutal snaps in the Super Bowl.
Right. It didn't matter because they had Patrick Mahomes. So all these little things we talk about, offensive line this, offensive line that, the Niners' offensive line hasn't been as bad as some of the other teams that have succeeded with the offensive lines, right? Like the offensive line wasn't the difference between them and the Rams. The Rams' offensive line was worse. It was that Stafford was better than Jimmy.
Yeah. Corey Soto says, shouldn't get too attached, my friend. Everything is temporary. I write books. I may write a good one, but if it's not quite right, I deconstruct and start from there. Yes, I understand that, Corey, but at the same time, like if you were to tear this roster down, you'd spend 2 years, let's say, trying to build it up to what it is right now. And again, you and I just talked about, Vish, the young core that this team still has. There are still some really young pieces in place that, if you tore it down, those would be the kind of pieces you would want to get in place to build it back up again. They have that, most notably at the quarterback spot.
And I don't see why there wouldn't be players ascending if you don't give them the opportunity, right? Like they haven't had young players ascend, but it's also like they have a tight end who plays every snap, who's an amazing blocker, amazing receiver, and all of that. What happens if you need a guy to emerge and become your tight end? It might be rocky at the beginning, but I don't doubt that guys can emerge. Look at the Rams this year. Coming into the year, there were so many different spots on the Rams that we didn't know that if they had starting caliber talent. And over the course of the year, if you believe in their coaching, which is why I believe in the Niners, I don't recommend this for everybody. I believe in the Niners coaching. Similar to the Rams, I think they can develop players. I saw them do this with all these young players we look at as stars today. I feel like they can take young players, draft them, have them grow in their system, and develop them. I think they can create more stars. I really do. And I think they can create more starting caliber players. I really do. If they give their young players chances and opportunities, and
I agree,
those opportunities have to be there, right? Because you're not going to put a young player on the field over a veteran one if the veteran one is better. But if you have an open spot for a young player to take an opportunity, I mean, Hufanga, that's what happened to him, right? That's what happened to him.
All we heard with the 49ers with Trey Lance was, we know he might not be better, but we're going to ride with him.
They didn't think he was even going to emerge into that, clearly.
I think that you should play a younger player over one of these veteran Logan Ryan type players, even if they are worse at first, because that's how they get better.
No, I wouldn't do it if they're worse at first. If you're playing in a big game and they're worse at first,
then how are you going to ever get them better? How are they going to get better then? You're talking about the Niners can develop guys. How?
I mean, they did do it right week 2, week 3, early for Burford, and then they would split him out, and then they would play the veteran in the playoffs.
I think your guys can't get better.
They tried to give Trey Lance the snaps with the 2 quarterback system.
Right. And they tried that. Because what did they say? They said he's only going to get better if he gets plays on the field. The way most human beings learn is you try something,
but there's no such thing as development. I'm messing with you.
I feel like you're going all over the place on me, Vish. You're turning.
I am.
So let's wrap it up. I didn't do a good job of laying it out, but we did answer the combine questions. One, who the defensive coordinator is going to be, we have no idea. Is the answer to that question?
You said inside. I went with outside. I think I went with outside for the sake of disagreement, because frankly, my official answer, Rob, is that I have no freaking clue.
With this team, you never know, though. Is there anything they can do that would shock you? Because to me, the answer is no, because I've learned to expect the unexpected with this team.
Yeah, if they got somebody that changed the scheme, it would shock me.
If they got Belichick, would it shock you?
That would blow my mind.
It wouldn't shock me. I'd be super
That wouldn't
happy.
even be real to me. That wouldn't even be real to me.
I would be awesome. But they're willing to take big swings. That's not the issue with the 49ers. Corey says, never said to get rid of every piece, but tear down the old core. Also give your draft picks more playing time. A lot of these players who everyone says sucked, we never even saw them play. what development. I agree. I think they need to get the whole we're in a Super Bowl window. We can't have a guy ever make a mistake out of their freaking mind.
Yeah.
What they
And by the
should
way,
do, they should say these guys might make mistakes, but the rest of the team is good enough to pick up the slack.
yeah. Well, that was their idea with Trey Lance, right? And
Yes.
yeah. But I will say I 100% don't believe there's no such thing as development. That was a tongue-in-cheek thing to say because I took something completely out of context that Rob said earlier in the show, and I
Thank
was
you.
making fun of him. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You're not the only person I host with that does that. I'll just say that.
I know who that other person is, and
Yeah,
I
it's
think he
Grant
does an
Cohn.
excellent job of it.
It's Grant Cohn, and it drives me nuts.
Really?
Yes. Anyway, that's
I
going to
think
wrap
he
up
does an
today's
excellent
show.
job of it.
It drives me crazy. Please rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please and thank you. Become a YouTube channel member if you haven't done so already. John Lynch speaks tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
You got a
Bish.
question for him, Rob? Give me one question. You got John Lynch right in front of you.
Man, right in front of me. Do I get the John Lynch that will give me like 30 seconds of pure unvarnished truth?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
gonna scratch his head if he does not.
Then I would that was 100% accurate. I would say, does Kyle Shanahan truly believe he did nothing wrong in any of the Super Bowls, including this one? Does he really think his decision making was 100%? There's no
That's what you would go
accountability there,
for?
no self-reflection.
Asking John a question about Kyle?
Yeah, because that's the thing I most want to know. Because that to me is the biggest question. Because if Kyle doesn't change that thinking, then the path for the 49ers to win a Super Bowl gets even more narrow because I think the game script has to go a very specific way for that not to come into play.
Yeah, I would like to ask him why do you think it would have to be something about the 10-point leads, the fact that it's happened 3 out of 4 times. Like you said, I haven't fully processed what happened 2 weeks ago. It's still like kind of just a open wound for me. And I'm still like very bitter about it. As you can see, anytime I talk about it, I don't think I'm bitter about it until someone has me talk about it. But yeah, I would ask something about like what changes have you implemented given what happened there?
That's what would happen to me is I would be talking about it because we've had to do shows every day, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like the rage and the grief and all that stuff would come out. M. Patel quickly says, I didn't get 49ers in 5 this AM. So it was a little delayed coming out. I had to do some family stuff last night, so I didn't get a chance to do it last night. So I did it this morning, and Apple Pods took their sweet time getting it up when I actually did do it. It took them like 2 hours to get it up, but it's there now on Apple Pods, on YouTube. It's there for you if you want to check that out, Patel.
Did you get to 5?
A little under this morning. The length sometimes varies in the off season depending on what happens. I'm not going to lie. I don't fill it with crap just to get it to 5
Yeah,
minutes.
that's what I thought. Yeah, I've heard it before, so I was wondering like this week, like how did you get to 5?
Yeah, I don't like. I would refuse to waste your time. If there's only 3 minutes worth of stuff that I think is good, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Most
Nothing you
days,
say waste my time, Rob.
most days in the regular season, there's a lot of stuff, and it's actually longer than 5 minutes. But by the way, 187. Will you cut juice? The amount of people that are so attached to Kyle Juszczyk boggles my mind. The dude makes way too much money for a fullback, and everybody that likes to say, oh, he does other stuff. It's so overblown.
The best
So
contribution
overblown.
from the Juszczyk family to the NFL season was Kristen's
With a
outfits.
jacket, right?
No, I'm joking. Those
I'm
first
not.
of all, her outfits, they're actually like sweet.
They're
Like
great.
the fashion is like fantastic. I like it. I'm a fan. I like Debo's Purdy vest, all of that. He's one of the guys that I think's just like he's the old culture. Yeah.
The old guard. He was off the field for more plays than he was on the field.
He's had the funny moments, right? Like here's my issue with him. Okay. I actually have a rant about this guy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because he's got a history doing this. Okay. First, this is the same guy that goes on Haberman and Middlecoff and complains about how the things he says about Trey Lance are taken out of context, right? But who is Mr. Back to Niners football? It's that guy. So he says things, but then he gets mad when people say certain things. Same thing he did after the Super Bowl. Guy goes to the media. Nobody said, Kyle Juszczyk, say you didn't know the rules. He offered it. He volunteered that information. And then the next day, he's all pissed off and he's like, you guys took my words out of context to shit on Kyle. Like, no, we didn't tell you to say, hey, I didn't know the overtime rules. We didn't put those words into your mouth. You said that. So he has a history doing stuff like this. I think he's one of the guys. He plays like 40-50% of the snaps. I was a fan of getting rid of him even in 2021. I thought they could have been a more 11 personnel offense. I think with the way Juwan Jennings emerged, I think they can be a more 11 personnel offense. They played him inline a lot in 2020, which was why I thought they were going to get rid of him, because they played like more 12 personnel from their 21 personnel, because Kyle Juszczyk played inline a lot that year. And so that's why I thought they would get rid of him. He's one that I think that he makes way too much money for how many snaps he actually plays. That's
way too much.
He's a great player. He just does not play that much in their offense because he's playing 50% of the snaps.
If he wants to play for $1 million, I'm all for it. You can stick around, Kyle. If not, and I wouldn't blame him if he didn't want to, by the way, I want players to get as much as they can. I just don't want my team to always be the one that pays it. Adios, Kyle.
It's weird. You know, the weird thing, and I never have gone through this as a fan, so like I actually do not understand this one. It's where a star player like a Debo, an Ayuk, Nick Bosa, when this guy is waiting on getting paid, fans are like, yeah, get rid of him. He turned on him. Like, he doesn't deserve the money. Nick Bosa's really not that good, right? Like, we had conversations like that. Is he really that good? He's a little overrated. He's not Myles Garrett. Like, we have conversations like that. But then when we're talking about a guy who probably makes a little bit more than what he's contributing to the team in terms of how much he plays and how good he is relative to what he makes, he's also older. He's also a guy who's got his best years behind him, not in front of him. No offense, even though he's still an excellent player. I'm not saying that. It's just the reality of attrition in the NFL. And people get so sensitive to cutting this guy. You have no problem putting down the young ascending guy about to be paid, and he might be worth every penny he's going to be paid. But you get really mad when you talk about getting rid of the guy who might no longer even be worth the money that he's going to be paid. Crazy world we live in.
Crazy world we live in. We like juice, so we can never ask him to take less money, or we can never, ever get rid. The offense would crumble. People are telling me, oh, you don't understand how important
we
Kyle
might miss some quotes to the media that he might deliver and then get mad about himself.
Like the idea that the offensive, like the run game would crumble without Kyle Juszczyk. Give me a break. Like, give me a break. And if that's the case, then they're screwed when he retires. I guess Kyle Juszczyk has to play forever.
And they talked about the fullback being so important, right? Part of it was he was their big signing. He was a versatile player.
Yep.
He's very reliable on the off the field. He's terrific in the locker room. He checks so many boxes as a guy you give money to and you sell him, right? He sells optically as a player that fans can get around. That's why they sold the crap out of him from the beginning. Now let's go back. I do actually know the answer to Kyle Shanahan's fullback in Houston. But I was going to say, can you name his fullback in Houston? Can you name his fullback in Cleveland? Can you name his fullback in Washington? Can you name his fullback in Atlanta? Because here's the thing. When you say the fullback is the most important thing to his offense, it only became a thing when they sold it that way in San Francisco because they paid that guy a lot of money. They were not talking about the fullback over Julio Jones or Andre Johnson or any of those guys then, okay? So they'll be okay, I promise.
Preach, Vish. Yes, thank you. Only when they paid the fullback more money than any fullback in the league had gotten by a 200%.
Right.
They sell how. No, we really. That's like me going up to my wife being like, "No, honey, I really need to get the 85-inch TV instead of the 60-inch TV."
Forget the fact that Houston had Hall of Fame left tackle Dwayne Brown, Hall of Fame receiver Andre Johnson. Forget that Washington had Hall of Fame tackle in Trent Williams and receiver who is very good in Pierre Garçon. Forget Cleveland having Hall of Famer Joe Thomas. Forget Jake Matthews, top 5 pick in Atlanta, and Julio Jones. It was the fullback in every single one of those places. That's why he went and gave the fullback the money he gave.
I really need, honey, that 85-inch TV is really superior to that 65-inch one. It really is. It's 4K. I have to have it. I need that extra screen size. I have to have it. That's what it is with the fullback and the 49ers. So Yeah. Anyway, all right. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, everybody. We'll go live when the 49ers do hire a defensive coordinator, if they ever do. We'll be live tomorrow at 11 o'clock as John Lynch is speaking from the combine. I'll be interested to hear what he has to say. I'd be very interested to hear what he has to say. Like, what are they're going to ask him? Like, what are you doing since the Super Bowl? They'll probably ask him about Ayuk. I imagine that. Here's what I want to know. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about this, my one question for John Lynch would be, are you open to trading Brandon Ayuk? Because remember when they asked about Trey Lance and the answer was, we'll trade anybody on the roster. We'll trade Kyle and John. And then they asked about trading Bosa. And what did he say? I'm sure never. That door's never been open. Nope.
Yeah.
You'll know everything you need to know by John Lynch's answer, because anything other than, nope, we're definitely not trading him, means you can get Brandon Ayuk for the right offer, which, by the way, I think is the right philosophy.
I agree. And you know what's funny? They just lost the Super Bowl, and this is his least stressful combine press conference in
true.
2 years.
Because
the year before there's no Jimmy G conversation, there's no Trey Lance conversation, there's no Brock Purdy elbow conversation.
Yep, you're right. There's no quarterback controversy. It's just, will you re-sign one of your players who's already under contract?
Oh, and the most stressful. And you might get a couple questions about the fact that you just lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I know what he's going to say. Like, hey, we're going to try really hard. It was a really close game, blah, blah, blah. And I should say this too. If the 49ers aren't facing the greatest quarterback of his generation in the Super Bowl both times, they might have won one anyway, even with all the stuff that we complained about.
I know. That's why it pisses me off, because the Rams 21, they're so lucky they got the 1 year, and all respect to the Bengals, very good team. And maybe Joe Burrow and them, because they tore up the Niners this year, they might have torn them up in that Super Bowl. But I think that the Rams also lose if they had to face even that 21 Chiefs team in the Super Bowl. Yeah.
It's a good point. But all right. Have a good Monday, everybody. We'll be live tomorrow. Like, subscribe, rate, review, follow, all that good stuff. Have a good one.